At her 75th birthday dinner, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up, pointed her knife at my plate, and sneered loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Everyone look at this greedy, trashy gold digger, ordering an $80 filet like she's somebody, while the rest of us have sacrificed everything. Real family doesn't flaunt money in front of people who are actually struggling. My sister-in-law grinned and started filming my plate. My husband kept his eyes glued to the white napkin in his lap, saying nothing. They shoved the full bill across the table at me. I smiled, handed the server my card, signed it calmly, then slid one single sheet of paper across the linen tablecloth toward her. The entire table froze. What that one piece of paper exposed, and the way their whole world collapsed in the next 19 minutes, is why I finally walked away from the family I had been quietly keeping alive for 5 years. My name is Elise Wilson. I'm 38 years old. Welcome back to Mild Justice Stories, where quiet women keep their composure while everything around them burns. If you've ever been called trash by the people you were secretly saving, you're in the right place. Drop a comment with the word steak and subscribe for the full story. Let me back up to the beginning of that night, because nothing you just heard came out of nowhere. Not the knife, not the silence, not the receipt, especially not the receipt. The reservation was for 7 o'clock at Halston's, the steakhouse on Peachtree Road in Buckhead. Patricia had chosen the place herself. She had chosen it 9 months earlier, when her 70th birthday was still abstract enough to be aspirational. She wanted the white tablecloths and the brass sconces and the wine wall with the rolling library ladder. She wanted, she said, to be celebrated somewhere that mattered. She said it the way she said everything, like she was already wearing the photograph that would be taken of her. I arrived 8 minutes early. Daniel was already 20 minutes late. He had texted from the office that a client had run over. He had not been at the office in 3 months, but the text was the same one I'd seen for years, and I no longer corrected him. I waited at the bar. The bartender was a woman with copper hair I had seen a dozen times. She knew my drink without asking. "Same as usual, Ms. Wilson. San Pellegrino, lime, no straw." I nodded. "And the back room?" She lowered her voice. "Vincent's been expecting you." She set the glass on a cocktail napkin and slid it toward me, and I noticed behind her, on the small silver tray where the bartenders kept folded checks, a single leather folder waiting with the corner of a printed reservation note tucked inside. The note had my name on it in red ink. I had written that note 2 days earlier, over the phone. On a Thursday evening I do not remember well, except for the way my hand had stopped shaking when the call ended. Vincent Ashford had been the manager at Halston's for 9 years. He had walked me to private rooms when my law firm closed deals. He had set up the small reception when my mentor made senior partner. He had brought a candle to a table once when my best friend's mother died, and we needed somewhere to sit quietly without being asked anything. He knew me the way good managers know quiet women who tip well and never make a scene. He found me at the bar before I could reach the table. "Ms. Wilson, your request from Thursday is noted. Folder comes to you. Nobody else sees the total." "Thank you, Vincent." He hesitated. "Only a fraction." "Anything else for tonight?" "No," I said. "Just the folder." He glanced past me toward the back alcove, where Patricia was already seated at the head of the table, watching us. He gave the smallest nod and stepped back. The gold pin on his lapel, a small stag, the Halston's mark, caught the light as he turned. Patricia did not stand when I reached the table. She lifted her wine glass, drank, and set it down with the rim aligned perfectly to a coral lipstick print she had left earlier. Brooke gave me a smile that landed somewhere on the wrong side of her face. The 7 other guests were Patricia's church friends and her old college roommate. Olivia and Sophie were at the children's end of the table, drawing on the placemats with green and pink crayons. Olivia waved when she saw me. Sophie kept drawing. "Well," Patricia said, loud enough for the next table to hear, "the lawyer arrives." The chair beside her, reserved for Daniel, was still empty. I sat across from Patricia. Olivia immediately abandoned her crayon and slid down the bench to be next to me. She leaned her shoulder against mine. She did not ask permission. She never did. Aunt Elise, my crayon broke. I'll trade you mine. I gave her the green one from my bag I always carried for moments like this. I had been carrying that crayon for 2 years. Olivia was the only person at the table who treated me like family on instinct. Daniel arrived at 14 past 7. He kissed Patricia on the cheek, nodded at Brooke, ruffled Sophie's hair, and slid into the chair beside his mother without making eye contact with me. He apologized to the table, not to me, for being late. The menus came. The waters were poured. Megan introduced herself. She was a woman in her early 30s, Irish American, with steady eyes and an easy way of standing slightly back from a table to let the family geometry tell her where to pour first. She poured Patricia's wine first. When she came to my chair, I asked for the 8-ounce filet, medium rare with béarnaise. Patricia's wineglass paused halfway to her mouth. Brooke leaned toward her and whispered something. Patricia's mouth flattened. Daniel ordered a 14-ounce ribeye without looking up from the menu. Patricia ordered the Dover sole, $62, and announced to the table, in the voice she used for important charitable gestures, "I have to watch what I eat, not just for my health, for my budget." Two of her church friends nodded the way people nod when they have been trained to nod at things they don't fully understand. Brooke ordered a cocktail, then another. The cocktails were $18 apiece. I did not say a word about it. Across the table, Olivia was building a tower out of sugar packets. Sophie had begun a drawing of what looked like a horse with 8 legs. Patricia took a long drink of her Sancerre and began the speech. It was a familiar speech. It always began with how hard the past 5 years had been, how Howard's passing had taken everything, how nothing in this country worked anymore for old women who had played by the rules, how prescription costs were criminal, how groceries were impossible, how some people, and here her eyes did not move, but the entire table understood she meant me, had no idea what it was like to ration. "Half this family is one bill away from losing the lights," she said. The church friend with rhinestone glasses nodded again. I cut a piece of bread. I did not look at Daniel. He was already folding the corner of his napkin into a smaller and smaller triangle. The appetizers arrived. Patricia barely touched hers. She had begun a second glass of wine. The dining room had filled in around us. Couples, a birthday table across the room with balloons, a small group of women in dresses who had clearly come from a wedding. The sound of a Saturday night at a Buckhead steakhouse rose to its normal pitch and stayed there. Then the entrees arrived. Megan set my filet down with a small, "Careful, the plate is hot." She set Patricia's sole down. She set Daniel's ribeye down. She turned to refill the wine. Patricia had not yet picked up her own fork. She picked up her steak knife instead. She turned the knife so the tip pointed toward my plate. She rose halfway out of her chair. Her voice, when she let it loose, was not the voice she had used during the speech. It was bigger. It was performative. It was meant to carry to the brass sconces on the wall, to the diners at the table beside ours, to anyone in the dining room who had been quietly enjoying their evening up to this point. "Everyone look at this greedy, trashy gold digger, ordering an $80 filet like she's somebody, while the rest of us have sacrificed everything. Real family doesn't flaunt money in front of people who are actually struggling." Megan stopped with the wine bottle in her hand. A couple at the next table turned their heads. The mother of the bridesmaids glanced across the room. The conversation in the alcove did not pause. It ended. The whole table went still. Daniel, beside his mother, looked at his napkin. He folded it again. Brooke laughed once, sharp and unembarrassed, and picked up her iPhone. Olivia's small hand found my forearm under the table. I did not move. I had learned, over many years of difficult depositions in difficult kitchens, that the wrong thing to do in a room that had gone still was to fill it. I let the stillness be. Brooke turned her phone screen side toward me, the red dot, the little camera icon. She tilted the lens so it caught both my plate and my face, angled the way she had angled it before for the videos she put on her grid. She believed she was capturing a triumph. I picked up my own knife, the one Patricia had not pointed at me, and I cut a piece of the fillet. I lifted the bite. I ate it slowly. I set the knife and fork down. I sipped my water. I dabbed the corner of my mouth. Patricia had sat back down. The knife was still in her hand. She placed it on the side of her plate, exactly parallel to the fork, like a woman who had remembered her etiquette training in the middle of a stabbing. Across the table from me, two of her church friends had grown very interested in their napkins. The third had begun looking around for Megan, possibly for the check, possibly for an exit. Olivia's hand on my forearm tightened. "It's nice, sweetheart," I told her quietly. "Eat yours." Patricia, hearing the gentleness of that exchange, leaned forward again. "Of course she'll comfort the child," she said to the table. "She has plenty of money to comfort children. She just doesn't have the decency to comfort her own family. She makes a show of it. She always has." Daniel folded his napkin into eighths. The entrees finished. Megan cleared. Patricia waved her off when she offered dessert. The two church friends looked at each other and excused themselves to the restroom. They were gone for 15 minutes. They did not come back to the table when they returned to the dining room. They went straight to the bar. I watched one of them order a glass of water and then a Coke. At 9:12, Megan brought the check folder. She brought it directly to me, the way Vincent had promised. She set it down on the linen between my water glass and my coffee saucer. She did not look at Patricia. Patricia, beside Daniel, watched the folder. "Well," she said, "since some of us can clearly afford it." I did not respond. "It would be ungenerous," she said, "for you not to take care of this, wouldn't it? After everything we've sacrificed? After what you ordered? After the way you carried yourself tonight? It's the very least you can do." She let the sentence land. She let the table absorb it. She let Brooke film it. Daniel did not say a word. He could have said a word. He could have said, "Mom, please." He could have said, "I'll get half." He could have said any of the small sentences that husbands learn to say at family dinners to keep their wives from being eaten alive. He said none of them. He folded his napkin again. I smiled. It wasn't the bitter smile of a woman bracing. It wasn't the polite smile of a woman swallowing. It was the smile of a woman who had done the math years ago and had been waiting only for the bill. "Of course, Patricia," I said, "I'll take care of the table. Megan, thank you." I opened the folder. The total at the bottom read $612.85. The pre-applied gratuity sat above it at 20%. I reached into my wallet and took out my own platinum card. Not the joint card I shared with Daniel, the one Patricia had assumed I would use, the one Brooke's camera was waiting to capture. But my personal card, the one in my own legal name, the one that had been my account before the marriage and would be my account after it. I slid the card into the leather sleeve and handed the folder back to Megan. She accepted it with a small professional nod. "And one more thing, please." Megan paused. "Of course, Ms. Wilson. After you bring the slip back, please come to my side of the table, not the center." Another nod. She walked away. Across the table, Patricia's smile had begun to lose its edges. She had won, and yet something about my voice had not matched the script she'd written for the night. Brooke's phone was still up, but her hand had drifted slightly. Daniel was folding his napkin into 16ths. The fabric was small enough now that he had run out of geometry. He folded it anyway. I reached down into the work bag at my feet and took out the slim leather folder I had been carrying since Thursday. Oxblood, gold clasp, 2 days old in my purse and 10 years old in my filing room. I set it on the linen tablecloth between my water glass and the place where Patricia's own napkin would have been, if she had been the kind of woman who used a napkin. Megan returned with the card slip. I signed it without looking. I added a 30% tip on top of the pre-applied 20, and I wrote her name on the line where most people write nothing, and I drew a small, careful circle around the total. I slid the slim folder open. I removed the single sheet of paper. I placed it face up on the tablecloth. I slid it across to Patricia with 2 fingers, the way I had moved depositions across mediation tables for 10 years, and I stopped it just below her wine glass. The time was 9:32. Before I tell you what was on that page, I have to tell you about a husband. I have to tell you about my husband, who at 9:32 on a Saturday night in May, while his mother sat across from his wife and read a piece of paper she did not yet understand, was folding a linen napkin into sixteenths because he had run out of eighths. I had counted that napkin before. I had counted it 21 times. Each time it was at a family dinner. Each time it was after Patricia had said something to me that would have made any other man stand up. Each time Daniel folded. Each time he did not lift his head. Each time I sat across from the geometric collapse of a man I had once thought brave, and I told myself it was a phase, and I told myself it was his way, and I told myself 100 soft lies about how love sometimes looked like silence. 21 dinners, 21 foldings. A 22nd would have been a sin against myself. 2 weeks before the birthday, on a Tuesday morning, the 28th of April, in the kitchen of the house I had paid the down payment for in 2017, Daniel had asked me, in a voice that approximated tenderness, to please not bring up the financial side of things at Patricia's birthday dinner. She's 70, Al? She's old. She survived cancer. She just wants one night to feel like the matriarch. I had been pouring coffee into the navy ceramic mug I kept for mornings. I did not want to argue. "What about my night?" I had asked. He had not answered. He had poured his own coffee. He had walked out of the kitchen. He had taken the dog out into the yard, and when he had come back in, he had not finished the conversation, because he had never intended to. He had said what he wanted me to hear, and he had counted on the fact that, after 11 years of marriage, I would do what I had always done, which was let his mother have the floor and pay for the floor at the end of the night. I had not argued, because by Tuesday morning the 28th of April, I had already met with Theodore Whitfield. I had not told Daniel. I had not told anyone. I had simply walked into a Buckhead office on a Wednesday afternoon in mid-April with a stack of statements under my arm and asked for the cleanest possible way to stop a kindness from becoming a cage. So when Daniel asked me, that Tuesday in the kitchen, to please not bring it up at the birthday, I did not bring it up at the birthday. I brought it to the birthday. That is not the same thing. A husband's job at a family table is not to agree with his wife. It is not even to take her side. It is to refuse, in any room and at any cost, to let her be humiliated alone. It is to stand up when the knife is pointed across the table at her plate. It is to say, even quietly, "That's enough, Mom." It is to break the spell of the family theater long enough for everyone present to remember that the woman across the candle is also a person. Daniel had never done any of those things. He had folded a napkin 21 times. I had watched him do it. I had married him in August of 2014 in a stone church in Savannah. He had cried during the vows. I had believed him. I had believed him when he said he would always be in my corner. I had believed him when he said his family was complicated, but that his mother would come around. I had believed him for years, past the point I should have, because the alternative, that I had married a man who would not stand up for me, was a wound I had not been ready to look at. At 9:32 on a Saturday night in May, in the alcove of a steakhouse in Buckhead, beside the mother who had just called his wife a gold digger across a room full of strangers, Daniel was folding his napkin into sixteenths. I looked at him. He did not look up. That was his last vote. Now I'll back up further, because the page I just slid across the tablecloth had a date on it, and the date on it was Thursday, May 7th, 2026. And to understand what that date meant, you need to understand a different date, 6 years earlier, in a different room. Howard Caldwell, my father-in-law, died in March of 2020. He was 67. He died in an Atlanta hospital ICU during the first wave of the pandemic. And he died alone, because none of us were allowed inside. Patricia stood in the parking lot in a black coat and watched the window of his floor for 40 minutes before a nurse came down to tell her it was over. Daniel and I drove her home. Brooke met us there. Howard was buried 2 weeks later in a service of 15 people masked in the spring sun. At the graveside, Daniel took my hand. "Elle," he said, She has nothing. He didn't leave her anything. There's no life insurance. The house is mortgaged. The savings are gone. I don't know how to tell her. I squeezed his hand. I said, "We'll handle it." I thought he meant we. He meant me. In June of 2020, 3 months after Howard's funeral, I sat in Theodore Whitfield's office on Peachtree Street and drafted what became the Caldwell Family Support Trust. I funded it with $80,000 from my personal partnership distribution at Wilson and Hartley. The trust was structured as separate property. Theodore was very clear about that. Funded only from my premarital assets and my own postmarital earnings, never from joint accounts. Disbursements would go directly to vendors, not to family members. The hospital would be paid, the school would be paid, the mortgage company would be paid. None of it would ever look like a check from me. Daniel was named on the trust as designated family contact. That was a non-fiduciary role, a communications liaison position, used to keep me from having to make every call. He was given the authority to receive billing inquiries, sign annual acknowledgments, and field family questions about disbursements. He signed the first acknowledgment in November of 2020. He signed again in 2021, in 2022, in 2023, in 2024, in 2025. 5 signatures, 5 years of full knowledge, 5 years of carrying the weight of what was happening, and 5 years of refusing to share the weight. "You're not required to do this, Elise," Theodore had said in 2020 the first time we sat down. He had taken his silver pen out of the pocket of his suit jacket, and he had set it down on the slate blue binder between us, and he had looked at me across the conference table. "You can take care of medical bills as a gift if you want. You don't need a trust. You don't need to commit." "I want to commit," I had said. "If I commit, I won't think too hard about it. If I think too hard about it, I'll stop. They need me not to stop." He had nodded. He had picked up the pen. He had drafted the documents. By February of 2021, Patricia had been diagnosed with stage 3B ovarian cancer. Daniel called me from the hospital parking lot in tears. He said, "We need the best. We need the best doctors. We need a private nurse for the chemo months. Anything you can do?" I said, "Send me the bills." The bills came. The bills did not stop. Dr. Hadley Beaumont at Emory Oncology Associates became Patricia's lead. The trust paid her. The trust paid the second opinion consults at MD Anderson over video. The trust paid the private nurse for the 8 months Patricia could not lift her arms above her head. The trust paid the home modifications, the railings, the shower bench, the chairlift, that nobody else in the family even noticed had been installed. Howard's insurance had lapsed 6 months after his death. Cobra was finite. Patricia was uninsured for the worst 18 months of her life. The trust covered all of it. Patricia did not know. Daniel told her entitlement, when she asked exactly twice and never again, that Dad set everything up before he passed. "It's all taken care of. Don't worry about it, Mom." She had not asked a third time. She had not wanted to. People who survive cancer through other people's invisible labor very often do not ask, because asking opens a door they would rather not walk through. She survived. She went into remission in April of 2022. Her hair grew back. She started attending church socials again. She told everyone at the church socials that Howard, before he died, had taken care of everything, and that her late husband had been a man of foresight and dignity. I sat in the pew beside Daniel and listened to her say it. I did not correct her. That summer, Brooke's marriage ended. Her husband emptied their joint account, $19,000, and left, leaving Brooke with twin daughters and a craftsman house on Claremont Road and a mortgage she could not make on her own. Daniel came home that night and sat on the edge of the couch and put his face in his hands and said, "Ella, she'll lose the house. The twins will have to change schools. It would break Mom." He said Mom. He did not say Brooke. He did not say the twins. I asked for the lender's wire instructions. In July of 2022, I wired First Horizon a lump sum of $9,800 to bring Brooke's mortgage current, pay off the arrears, and reinstate her good standing. Then I wired $2,400 on the first of every month for the next 36 months. The last regular payment cleared in July of 2025. By the time of Patricia's birthday dinner, the formal housing support had been done for nearly a year, and Brooke had been quietly assuming the way Brooke assumed most things, that I would simply pick it up again if she ever asked. Brooke believed for the entire 36 months that the money was coming from Daniel's quarterly bonus. Daniel did not have a quarterly bonus. Daniel had not had a bonus structure since 2021. I paid for Westminster schools when Olivia and Sophie started kindergarten in 2022. I paid for them again in first grade, in second grade, and in third grade. I paid for the twins' therapy after the divorce. Dr. Caitlin Rousseau, 3 sessions a month for 18 months. I paid for the Christmas envelopes that Daniel handed Patricia each December and told her were from Mom's own money, so she could give real gifts to the girls. 5 years. The page I had just slid across the tablecloth said, at the bottom, in bold 10-point Garamond, 5-year cumulative since June 2020, $484,500. Patricia did not know. She had just called the funder of that number a gold digger. Let me give you the scenes that the line items don't. In April of 2021, 2 weeks after Patricia's first chemo, she called me to thank me for soup. She said Daniel had brought her a Tupperware of something hot the night before. Chicken, parsnips, the kind of broth a daughter-in-law brings when a mother-in-law is dying. She said it had tasted like home. She said she had not expected me to be the kind of woman who could make soup like that. I had not made the soup. I had been in a deposition until 10 p.m. the night before. Daniel had bought the soup at the prepared foods counter of the Whole Foods on Ponce de Leon and put it in one of my Tupperwares. The price sticker had still been on the lid when he brought it into the kitchen. I had peeled the sticker off myself when I unloaded the empty container the next morning. Patricia thanked me on the phone for 43 seconds. She told me she had misjudged me. She said she had been raised to believe career women didn't know how to nourish a family. And she said she was sorry she had ever thought that of me. And she said, "I'm glad my son chose someone like you, Elise. I really am." I looked at Daniel across the kitchen. He was leaning against the island, eating a piece of toast, watching me through the steam from his coffee. "I'm glad you liked it, Patricia. Rest now." That was the first lie. Every lie after grew from it. In August of 2024, on the morning of Olivia and Sophie's first day of second grade at Westminster, Patricia gave an interview to her church newsletter about the importance of family legacy. She said in the article, which I read because Brooke posted it to her own Instagram with a heart emoji, that she had told Brooke during the divorce, "Those girls will not go to public school, not while their grandmother is breathing. I'd rather sell my engagement ring." She was wearing the engagement ring in the article photograph. She has never sold it. She has never tried to sell it. She's never come close. The trust paid Westminster directly that semester, $30,000 per child, $60,000 before lunch on enrollment day. Patricia spent the photograph day at the school's parent breakfast. She wore a coral suit. She told 3 other grandmothers by the volunteer table that education is the only inheritance we can leave them. The other grandmothers nodded. They believed her. Why wouldn't they? She had said it twice already on Sundays. I was not at the breakfast. I had a client matter that morning. I stopped by Westminster's billing office at 4 p.m. that afternoon to sign the year's tuition agreement on behalf of the trust. The billing officer was a kind woman in her 50s named Helena Brightwood, who knew me from previous years and never asked. "I won't keep you long, Ms. Wilson," she said. "Same as always?" "Same as always," I said. She slid the paperwork across the desk. I signed. I walked out. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for 10 minutes with the engine running before I could put it in gear. The third scene I want to give you happened in the spring of 2024 at Olivia's 7th birthday party. It was a small gathering. 8 kids, Brooke's house, a sheet cake from Publix, an inflatable bounce castle Brooke had rented but had not paid for in time, so I had paid for it when the rental company called Daniel, and Daniel had handed the phone to me with the expression of a man passing a hot pan. Patricia attended. She gave Olivia a $50 gift card to Target. She made a small speech at the cake about how grandmothers, in this country, give what they can. She wiped a single tear with the corner of her dinner napkin. After the speech, Olivia opened the rest of the gifts. Mine was the last one, a hardcover edition of A Little Princess, which she had asked me for in October, and which I had been waiting to give her for 6 months. She read the inscription. Her face changed. She got up from the cake table, crossed the room, climbed onto my lap, and threw her arms around my neck. She whispered into my ear, "Aunt Elise, even Grandma's gift card was from you, wasn't it?" "It always is." I held the back of her small head with my hand. I felt the soft hair at the nape of her neck. I felt the warm, small breath against my collarbone. "No, sweetheart," I said. "That was Grandma." She thought about it for a long second. Then she said, "But the best one is always from you." Patricia, across the room, was watching us. She did not smile. She did not look proud. She turned away, picked up her wine glass, and walked into the kitchen. A 7-year-old understood, 2 years before that dinner, what no adult at the table had been willing to acknowledge in 5 years. She knew who had been keeping us alive. I have not told this part of the story to many people. I am telling it to you now because I want you to understand the texture of what was on that single sheet of paper. The paper is not a story. The paper is the receipt for a story. The story is the bounce castle Brooke didn't pay for, and the soup Daniel didn't make, and the engagement ring Patricia never sold, and the tuition the trust signed for at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon in a billing office, where the woman behind the desk did not ask. The story is the small hand on my forearm at the dinner table. The story is the silence of a man folding linen into 16ths. The paper was just the proof. Back to the table. It is 9:32 on a Saturday night in May. Patricia has just been handed a piece of paper. She has not yet picked it up. The candle between us is steady. Megan has stepped 2 paces back from the table and is standing the way good servers stand when something is about to happen that they will not interfere with. Brooke's phone is still up. The little red dot is still on. Daniel is folding nothing now. There is nothing left to fold. His napkin is a small, exhausted square. Patricia looks at the paper. She does not touch it. She knows the letterhead. She has seen this letterhead before, on insurance EOBs that she dimly remembers receiving in the mail, and dimly remembers asking Daniel about, and dimly remembers being told not to worry about. The letterhead has a slate blue Whitfield estate law watermark in the upper right corner. It is the letterhead of the office that, somewhere in the back of her mind, she has always assumed handled Howard's estate. It did not handle Howard's estate. Howard didn't have one. I do not say any of this aloud. I say, "I'd like you to read this, Patricia. Just the highlighted lines." She picks the paper up with 2 fingers. Her hand is steady. She is still composing herself for the next round of the speech. She reads the top header, Caldwell Family Support Trust, disbursement summary, reporting period, May 1st through May 9th, 2026. Her face holds. She reads the first highlighted line, May 7th, 2026. Dr. Hadley Beaumont, Emory Oncology Associates, PET-CT scan, maintenance consultation, CA125 panel, patient, Patricia Caldwell, $4,280. Her hand begins to shake. She had been to Dr. Beaumont 2 days earlier. She had been told at the end of the consultation that the bill had already been settled. She had assumed, because she had been told for 5 years to assume, that it was Howard's insurance. She lifts her eyes from the paper. She does not look at me. She looks at Daniel. He does not look up. She drops her eyes back to the page. She reads the second highlighted line, May 8th, 2026. Westminster Schools, spring semester tuition installment. Beneficiaries, Olivia Caldwell, Sophie Caldwell, $9,612. She turns the paper over in her hands, the way a person turns a card looking for a denial. The back of the page has the trust governance footer. Trustee Elise Wilson, designated family contact Daniel Caldwell, drafted by Whitfield Estate Law, Atlanta, Georgia. Below that, in a small tidy table, annual acknowledgement signatures 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. D. Caldwell, 5 entries, 5 years, each one his initials in his own handwriting. Patricia's lips part. She does not breathe for 2 seconds. She makes a small sound that is not a word. Daniel, she says. Her voice has changed. It is lower. It is brittle. Your name is here. Your signature is on the back. 5 times. He does not lift his head. Daniel. She says it the way she had said it from the parking lot of the ICU in March of 2020. She says it the way she had said it on the porch the night Brooke's husband had left. She says it the way she had said it through bedsheets in the worst nights of chemo when she could not lift her arm to call for the nurse. She says it like the only word she has ever truly meant. He does not lift his head. Her eyes drop again. They find the bolded bottom line of the page. Year-to-date 2026, $74,860. 5-year cumulative since June 2020, $484,500. She reads the second number twice. Her lipstick presses against the white linen of her own napkin as she lifts it to her mouth without thinking. 484,000, she whispers. To no one. To the candle. To herself. The 2 church friends across the table, the ones who had returned from the restroom and had not made eye contact since, have begun, quietly, to put their things into their handbags. The third, beside Brooke, sets down her wine glass. The clasp of her brass purse closes with a small, audible click. Brooke behind her phone has stopped talking. She has stopped tilting the camera. Her face has changed in a way I do not look at, because I am not interested in her face anymore. Olivia and Sophie are no longer drawing. Olivia has put both hands flat on the placemat, and she is watching her grandmother across the table with the steady, unblinking attention of a child who knows she is witnessing a thing she will tell her own daughters about one day. Sophie beside her is watching me. The candle has not flickered. Megan has not moved. Patricia has the paper in her hands. She is still holding it. She has not set it down. She lifts her eyes one more time. This time, she looks at me. She does not apologize. She does not say I'm sorry. She does not say thank you. She says very quietly, "Why didn't you tell me?" I had been waiting 5 years for that question. I had imagined, on many bad nights and a few good ones, how I would answer it. I had imagined the soft version, the cold version, the version where I cried. None of those was the version I gave. Because Daniel asked me not to, for 5 years. It came out the way the truth comes out of women who have rehearsed it past the point of needing rehearsal. Even, flat, exact. Patricia did not look at me when she heard it. She did not need to. The sentence had its own coordinates. It traveled through the candle in the wineglass and the brass sconce on the wall, and it landed on the only chair in the alcove where it could land. It landed on her son. Daniel finally lifted his head. For the first time that night, he looked at his mother. His eyes were wet. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. And what came out of it was the sentence men say when they are watching themselves lose everything in real time and have nothing useful left to say. "Al, this isn't what it looks like." I did not answer him. I did not even turn toward him. I kept my eyes on Patricia. I said, "It is exactly what it looks like." The third church friend, the one I had not yet seen react, closed her purse audibly, stood up, kissed Patricia on the forehead, said, "Patricia, call me Monday, dear. We'll talk," and walked out of the alcove without looking back. The other 2 followed within 90 seconds. None of them would call on Monday. We all knew it. Daniel reached across the table. He reached for my wrist. His fingers got within 3 inches of my hand before I moved my hand away. The movement was small, not dramatic, not theatrical. No slamming, no scraping of glasses. Just a quiet pivot of my wrist into my own lap. He froze with his hand on the linen. He left it there. He didn't pull it back. He left it stranded on the tablecloth like a small dead animal. Brooke, behind her phone, looked at her screen. I think it was the screen that broke her. She had been recording for 41 minutes by then. At 7:53 p.m., 6 minutes after Patricia had stood up with the knife, Brooke had airdropped a 53-second clip of my plate and my face into the Caldwell family group chat, labeled "For the Cousins." She had hit send and forgotten about it the way you forget about a text message during a fire. Now, at 9:36 p.m., her phone showed her the receipt, delivered to 7, read by 4. I watched her face go white. Her aunt in Savannah had read it. Her cousin Annabelle in Birmingham had read it. 2 other relatives, Daniel's uncle, Brooke's college roommate who was technically family because she'd married a Caldwell second cousin, had read it. The video was on 7 phones. The read receipts were already in. Brooke tapped her screen. She tapped it again. She held a finger down on the message, the way an iPhone user does when she wants to unsend something. The little menu came up. The unsend option was grayed out. The 2-minute window had closed an hour ago. Unsend, she whispered to her phone, the way a child whispers a wish into a candle. Unsend, unsend. The phone replied with nothing. Phones don't reply. Olivia, beside me, leaned her shoulder harder into my arm. She had not let go of my forearm in 17 minutes. Patricia, across the table, was looking at her son. She had not yet apologized to me. She had not yet, in fact, even looked at me a second time. She was calculating. I had seen that calculation before. I had seen it in her face the day Howard died, when she had stood in the parking lot and stared up at his window. Not in grief, not in shock, but in the slow private accounting of a woman who had just lost her financial floor and was looking around the parking lot for the next one. She had found Daniel that day. Then she had found me. Now, at 9:38 p.m. on a Saturday night in May of 2026, she was looking for who was next. There was no one next. She knew it before I did. I stood up. I leaned down to Olivia. I cupped her small face in both my hands. I told her quietly that I loved her, that Aunt Elise was always going to love her, that she could call me on Sunday and we would go for pancakes. She nodded into my palm. Her chin trembled once, but she did not cry. Brooke, beside her, did not look up from her phone screen. I kissed Olivia's forehead. I straightened. I turned to Megan. Megan. She stepped forward. Thank you. You did beautifully tonight. I took 3 $20 bills out of my wallet, $60 in cash on top of the 30% tip I had already signed on the card slip, and folded them into the small black book I had been carrying. I handed her the book. For your trouble, and for not having to explain any of this to your manager. Vincent already knows. Megan's eyes flicked briefly, with something I have seen in the eyes of waitresses my whole life. Recognition. She took the book. She nodded once. Anytime, Ms. Wilson. I picked up my work bag. I tucked the slim oxblood folder back inside. I did not look at the page I had left on the table. Patricia could keep it. Patricia could burn it. Patricia could read it for the rest of her life. It was not the only copy. I walked out of the alcove. I walked past the wine wall. I walked past the bar, where the bartender with copper hair gave me the smallest nod. I walked past the host stand, where Vincent Ashford was standing, calm, still, watching me come, and where he opened the door for me before I reached it. Good night, Ms. Wilson. Good night, Vincent. I stepped out under the portico. The May air was warm and soft and smelled faintly of magnolia from the tree across the parking lot. The valet was already at the stand. I handed him ticket number 82. He turned to fetch my car. Daniel came out behind me. I heard the door. I did not turn around. Elle, I did not answer. Elle, please, let me come home with you. Let me explain. We can fix this. We've always been a team. We've always, um, the valet brought my car around. Silver Lexus. My car, not ours. Mine. The plates were in my name. The title was in my name. The loan was paid off. I had not financed a thing on Daniel's credit since the year we got married, and the small fact of that had become, over time, a very large fact. I turned to face Daniel. Megan stepped out behind him with a small white Halston's takeaway bag, the gold stag on the side, Daniel's untouched ribeye in a box. She had boxed it without being asked. I took the bag from Megan. I thanked her. I turned to my husband. He was holding his hands out, palms up, in the gesture of a man who had spent 11 years asking me to make things smaller and was just now realizing he had run out of room to ask. I held the bag out to him. He took the handle. I said the sentence I had been saving since the kitchen on a Tuesday morning 2 weeks earlier, when he had asked me not to take his mother's dignity at her birthday dinner and had not asked me anything about my own. You can keep the dinner, Daniel. I'm keeping everything else. I got into my car. I put it in drive. I pulled out onto Peachtree Road. In my rearview mirror, under the portico of Halston's at 9:51 p.m. on a Saturday night in May, my husband stood under a warm magnolia sky, holding a cold steak in a white paper bag. He did not call. I drove home alone. I did not cry on the drive. I did not cry when I parked. I did not cry when I let myself into the house, where the dog met me at the door, where the lamp in the entryway had been left on by me that morning, because Daniel had stopped turning lamps on for me a long time ago. I cried in the shower at 11:14 p.m. for about 3 minutes, the way women cry when they have finally stopped carrying something and the muscles that had been holding it up don't yet know what to do with themselves. Then I got out of the shower. I dried off. I drank a glass of water. I went to bed. The next morning was Sunday, May 10th. At 9 o'clock, I sat in Theodore Whitfield's home office in Buckhead. He kept a Sunday window for partner clients who needed paperwork done fast, with a cup of coffee and the slate blue binder open between us on his kitchen table. He was wearing reading glasses and the kind of cardigan a 60-year-old estate attorney wears on his own time. "Elise," he said, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it carefully. You can pull the entire trust. You'd be within your rights. Patricia's medical care would go to Medicare and her own resources, which I will tell you are limited but not nothing. The twins' tuition would convert to public school in the fall, which would be a transition but not a crisis. Brooke would have to refinance or sell. The legal pathway is clean. The moral pathway is yours to decide." I sipped my coffee. I said, "I'm not going to pull it, Theodore." He waited. "I'm not going to punish a 70-year-old woman by taking her doctor. I'm not going to punish 9-year-old children by taking their school. That's not what last night was about." I set the cup down. "I'm punishing the lie, not the life." He nodded slowly. "Restructure," he said. "Restructure," I said. "Patricia's medical, continued, conditional on a notarized acknowledgement in writing that the source of her care is me, not Howard's insurance. The twins' tuition, continued, conditional on Brooke's notarized acknowledgement of the same. Brooke's mortgage support. It already ended in July of last year. There is nothing to phase out. The Christmas envelope fiction stops today. Daniel is removed as designated family contact and replaced by your office, which is now the family liaison. All future communication about the trust goes through you. Done. And Theodore, yes. Patricia signs first. Brooke signs second. Daniel does not sign anything because there is nothing left for him to sign." He wrote it all down on a yellow legal pad in his old-fashioned blocky handwriting. He told me he could have the drafts ready by Wednesday. He told me to expect calls. He told me not to take them. Brooke started calling at 10:33 on Monday morning. By Wednesday at noon, she had called 11 times. Her voicemails progressed from contrite, "Elise, I am so sorry, please pick up," to defensive, You have to understand Mom is who she is. None of us could have stopped her. Too accusatory. You set us up. You brought that paper on purpose. You humiliated her on her birthday. To pleading, Elise, please, the girls, please. They don't understand. The girls love you. I listened to the eighth voicemail twice and returned exactly one call. I told Brooke in a 13-minute conversation in which I did not raise my voice that the twins' tuition would continue without interruption. I told her that her own housing was on her now and had been since last summer. I told her that the girls could see me whenever they wanted. I told her that I loved them and would not pull them into the rest of it. I told her that the next time she pointed a camera at me, she would not be welcome in the same restaurant. She did not respond to that last sentence. She did not have to. The video was already on 7 phones. By Wednesday night, 3 of the recipients had called her to ask what on earth was happening. By Thursday night, 2 of them had blocked her. By Friday morning, the cousin Annabelle in Birmingham, Daniel's father's brother's daughter, the matriarch's matriarch of the next generation, had called Patricia directly to ask, in a voice Patricia would describe to me much later as colder than any she had heard since Howard's funeral, what exactly had happened to the daughter-in-law who paid for everything. Patricia signed the notarized acknowledgement on Monday, May 18th, in Theodore's office, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She wore the navy suit she'd worn to Howard's funeral. She had lost 5 pounds in 9 days. She did not look at me when she walked in. She did not look at me when she sat down. She listened while Theodore read the 1-page acknowledgement aloud. She picked up the pen. She hesitated. Then she looked up. "Elise," she said. Her voice was the smallest it had ever been in my presence. "Did you ever, at any point, consider letting me die?" I felt the question land. I let it land. I said, "No, Patricia, not for 1 second. That's not what this is." She held the pen for another 4 or 5 seconds. Then she signed. Brooke signed on Tuesday the 19th, in the same office, in a soft beige sweater, without saying a word. On Friday, May 22nd, I filed for legal separation at the Fulton County Superior Court. Not divorce, not yet. Separation under Georgia Code, the cleaner instrument. The intent was simple: 30 days for Daniel to look at the word separation at the top of every email and every certified letter and every page of every court notice for a full month before we sat across from each other again. Whatever he was, he had not yet had to read his marriage in past tense. He was about to. My 39th birthday was Wednesday, May 20th. I went to Halston's at 7:30 alone. Vincent met me at the host stand. He did not say happy birthday. He said, "Welcome back, Ms. Wilson." He walked me past the bar, past the wine wall, past the alcove where the 11th of May had happened, and seated me at a small two-top by the window overlooking Peachtree. The candle was lit. The brass sconce above me was warm. The white tablecloth was clean and exact. Megan came to my table. She was working the section by the window that night. She did not pretend not to know. She did not pretend not to have been there. She set the menu down and said, in the soft, professional voice servers use when they want to say something larger than the order, "The bar would like to send something over, if you'll let us, Ms. Wilson." I smiled. I shook my head gently. "I'd like to pay for my own dinner tonight, Megan. Thank you." She nodded, the way Megan nodded, once slightly, without insistence. "Then the same as last time?" "The same as last time." She brought the 8-ounce filet, medium rare, with béarnaise. She set the plate down with the same small, careful, "the plate is hot" she had used 11 nights earlier. She set the steak knife beside the plate, handle toward me. The handle was the same handle Patricia had picked up. The blade was the same blade Patricia had pointed. A Wüsthof, weighted bolster, restaurant grade. I picked it up. I held it for a moment, in my own hand, in my own restaurant, in my own city. I felt the weight of it. I felt the cool of the bolster against the meat of my palm. I set it down beside my plate, parallel to the fork, the way Patricia had set it down after she had remembered her etiquette training. Then I picked it up again and I cut a piece of my own fillet. And I lifted the bite to my mouth and I ate it slowly. And the candle between me and the empty chair across from me did not flicker. I paid for the dinner with my own platinum card. I tipped Megan 30%. I wrote on the line where most people write nothing. Thank you, Megan, from me. I drew a small, careful circle around the total. I walked out under the portico at 9:18 p.m. The valet brought my car. I did not look at the magnolia tree. I drove home alone. On Friday, May 22nd, the same day I filed at Fulton County, I had Megan's signed card slip from May 9th professionally matted in a matte black frame. $612.85. The original? The first night I had ever paid a bill for my husband's family, and known for certain that it would be the last time I would pay a bill for a lie. I hung the frame on the wall of my home office on Tuesday, May 26th, across from the bar admission certificate I had been awarded at the State Bar of Georgia in November of 2012. Beneath the frame, on a small brass plate, 3/4 of an inch tall, 2.5 inches wide, I had engraved 3 words: paid in full, once. I look at the frame sometimes from my desk, when I am writing an email to a difficult opposing counsel, or when I am drafting a memo on a long Tuesday afternoon, or when I am simply sitting at my desk in the quiet after a quiet day. The words don't say what most people think they say. They are not a victory lap. They are not a brag. They are not a souvenir of a family I beat. They are a promise to myself. I paid. Once. For 5 years. I paid for cancer scans and PET-CTs and second opinions and chemo nurses. I paid for tuition and therapy and twins' birthday parties. I paid for a mortgage that would have foreclosed and a marriage that should have ended 4 years earlier than it did. I paid for the soup I did not make and the gift cards I had to pretend were grandma's. I paid $484,500 over 5 years, and I paid almost every cent of it without being thanked once, because I had agreed to a fiction in which the thanks would have spoiled the fiction. I paid. Once. Now Patricia pays for her own dignity in writing. Brooke pays for her own house by herself like everybody else. Daniel pays for the silence he chose, in the only currency he ever cared about. His mother's knowledge that the floor under her, for 5 years, had not been him. If at the top of this story you typed steak into the comments, I meant it. Not because I want the number. I don't. Because somewhere out there, on the other side of this screen, is a woman who is about to pay one more bill she should not be paying. I want her to see that other women have already done what she's about to do. Quietly. With paperwork. Without yelling. With one piece of paper across a tablecloth. I am one of those women. Tell me you're another. My name is Elise Wilson. I'm 39 years old. I'm paying for my own dinner from now on, and I'm eating it slowly.